Hey guys, this is Carmen from Carmen Eagleman Fitness, and I'm just jumping on to talk to you about episode 4 in my How to Make Your Groceries Last Longer series. And in this episode, I'm talking about where to store your produce or certain foods, whether they go in the fridge or they go out in the open at room temperature. I'm also going to talk to you about how to organize your fridge, because there is a certain method of where you should place certain foods to keep them fresher longer, right? So let's talk about some general tips on when it comes to your fridge. So the first is you don't want to overstock your fridge. I know sometimes, especially if you have a smaller one, you want to get in there as much food as possible, right? But if you overstock it and keep, things compacted together, you create warm pockets, or it leads to poor air circulation. And we put our stuff in our fridge to keep it cold, right? So we don't want it to get warm. So try not to overstock your fridge. Number 2 would be, don't use the top of your fridge as a place for food storage. I know that I used to keep my bread up there. I know some people keep their wine up there, and this isn't a great place for that, because the fridge gives off heat from trying to keep the food in the actual fridge cold. So it creates heat. It gives off heat, which heat rises, causing your bread to get moldy or your wine to spoil. So you really want to use the top of your fridge for appliances or things that are just not perishable. Number 3, and I talked about this in how to make your produce last longer, was to keep your fridge at 40 degrees or lower. And this is just really the optimal temperature to keep your food as fresh as long as possible, right? So let's break down let's break down the different layers or levels of the fridge. So let's first start with the doors. The door is actually the warmest part of your fridge, and I know that a lot of people keep their eggs and milk in the door, right? I was one of them. I used to store my milk in the fridge, or in the door, excuse me. So because it's the warmest, you don't want to place anything that's super perishable there. You want things that that are more resistant to fluctuations in the temperature, because you're constantly opening your fridge, right? So it just makes it for a warmer area. So things such as condiments, are great to keep, or juices are great to keep on the side of the door. They don't spoil as easily. Your upper shelves are going to be actually your most consistent temps. So this is where you'd want to place items that don't need to be cooked, such as milk, berries, tortillas, hummus, things like that can stay up there that benefit from that. On the lower shelves are actually going to be your coldest area. So this is where you'd want to keep your eggs, your raw meat, and then obviously you want to keep your raw meat separated, right? You don't want to have cross-contamination. So some ideas is maybe having a specific drawer that is dedicated just to meat, or having like a tub or bin that you wash out after using and emptying it, whatever, so you don't cross-contaminate between raw meats, or keeping them just basically in a separate container. So the crisper or drawers that are down on the bottom, this is usually a lot of fridges have where you can adjust the humidity, right, for optimal temperature for your fruits and veggies. Another thing that you might not know is don't cross store your fruits and veggies. So pick one dedicated just to fruits and one just to veggies. And for that reason, or the reason for that, is because fruits give off a lot of ethylene gas, some more than others. And when you place them with veggies, this will cause the veggies to ripen or spoil. So you really want to keep them separated in the drawers, because you'll be able to keep your produce lasting longer, right? So now is on to the question of what goes in the fridge and what doesn't. A rule of thumb that someone told me, and it's always stuck with me, is if you want to know where to store your produce, your fruits and veggies, is to think about where is it stored at the store. Is it something that's out in the outer aisles, or is it something that's more in the refrigerator or where they mist and keep it cold? And that's always helped me to kind of fall back on if I can't remember specifically whether it's something that should be kept out or is something that should go in the fridge. So let's start with what gets stored at room temperature. This is going to be your apples, bananas, because bananas will actually go ripen faster if you put them in the fridge. And that is, apples and bananas are ones that typically give off a lot of ethylene gas, so you don't want to store them with other veggies or fruits unless you're trying to ripen something such as an avocado. Citrus fruits, mangoes, melons. If you do like chilled melon and you want to keep it in the store or in the fridge, don't store it for longer than, I think it's like a day, maybe up to 3 days, because it'll make them pit. Papayas, pineapple, persimmons, potatoes, onions, winter squash, garlic. Those are all things that you want to store at room temperature. Tomatoes. Tomatoes were another one that I would store in the fridge. Tomatoes actually become what you call mealy, or they get a weird texture, and they'll become odorless. So basically losing their flavor when you put them in the fridge. So you really want to store them out on the counter. And think about it, when you go to the grocery store, they're always out in the outer aisle, right? Apples, if they're kept in a cool, dark place, they'll stay fresh up to 4 months. You want to store your garlic, onions, and potatoes, sweet potatoes, anything of that nature, in a well-ventilated area, in a dry, cool place, keeping them away from direct sunlight. And do not store your onions with potatoes, because this will actually cause them to go bad. And on the flip side, store your potatoes with your apples, because that'll keep them from sprouting, your potatoes from sprouting. So that'll keep them lasting longer for you. And a quick fun fact for onions, or how to store them, is if you take an old pair of pantyhose, like the netting kind, and you put them in, tie a knot in between each one, because you don't want your onions to touch. Otherwise, this will cause them to spoil. And then hang them up if you've got a hook in your pantry or from the ceiling. But this will keep them fresh up to 8 months. So that's always awesome. Because I know sometimes I don't always use onions right away. So some fruits and veggies that you can ripen on the counter, and then once they become ripe, you can put in the fridge to slow down the ripening process, would be avocados, kiwis, stone fruits such as peaches, apricots, nectarines, pears, plums. Ideally, once they become ripe, you want to eat them, but sometimes if we buy them in bulk, right, life's not perfect, we have a lot of them, put them in the fridge to help slow down that process. And then everything else would be stored in the fridge, right? So, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So everything else that I didn't mention, you would store in the fridge. There are some gray areas when it comes to certain foods, such as like nut butters or nut flours or nuts in general, right? If you don't use them, like I know on the nut butters that I buy a lot of almond butter, it'll tell you to keep refrigerated. If it's something that you use like a lot and up quickly, then you don't have to store it. But if it's something that's you don't, or you want maximum freshness, then that's something that you want to put in the fridge to keep fresh longer. So we use all those things pretty quickly, so we don't have to do that in our household. So anyways, this is Carmen from Carmen Eagleman Fitness, and I hope that you found these tips as helpful as I did, and that you have some ideas now on how to keep your produce lasting longer, and as well as other foods. Thanks for joining in, and have a great night.